Sheriff Boudreaux, thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's a bit of a different time now. I mean, you are for sure advancing to the November general election as well as the May special election runoff. Congratulations.
No, thank you. We appreciate it.
This interview is kind of a wrap-up interview of both primaries. I mean, to start, very general question, how do you feel like the race has gone for you so far in both that special election and primary? Let's take a moment to really reflect on your run in both those races.
Well, as we come into this race, we didn't know exactly what to anticipate, but we are very thankful that our message is resonating to many voters, and we're very happy that we moved on to both of the final races.
And you mentioned moving on, especially for November. Your goal is to really kind of target the entire district, right?
Yes.
Regardless of party, unite everyone. How do you do that? I mean, I think inevitably, given today's day and age, political division is such a big factor. So how do you do that? How do you reach across party lines?
Well, even for me, when I see that our parties on each side, when we come into Washington, D.C., whatever news station that you choose to look at, it's frustrating for me as a voter. I think it's frustrating for the community as a whole that we're not really getting things done. And so for me as sheriff, I have a long history of working with all sides, whether it be Democrat, Independent, Republican, it doesn't matter. And so my real focus is working on the people of this district.
You were pretty close, in close margins when it came to third place, third place in the race, candidate Marisa Wood, who is a Democrat. Again, both in the March 5th election, March 19th election. Are you planning on trying to get some of those voters to hopefully vote for you? And I'm curious, you said you have a history of working across the aisle, but I'm curious just because they are Democrats, and I think some of the viewpoints you have, some of the track record you might have, especially when it comes to former President Trump, may not necessarily align with those voters' views. So given your kind of agenda, your track record, how do you target Democrats, specifically those Marisa Wood voters, Andy Morales voters?
Well, I think what I want to do is target all those voters who are questioning who do they go with next. There's only two people left in this race. But if you look at my track record, I have a long history of working with Democrats in the state of California, with the legislators, because California is predominantly Democrat. And so working on issues that are important to us all, public safety is number one. We want to make sure that our families are safe. I think Democrats and Republicans alike want their families safe. We want our schools safe. We want to be able to exercise our First Amendment with the freedom of religion. And I think that resonates with Democrats and Republicans alike. Now we have our core issues that, quite frankly, we're going to be separated when it comes to pro-life. I'm very pro-life, and I think that many Democrats, not all of them, would argue that pro-choice is their concern. But for me, I think what we tell Democrats is that, as well as Republicans, it's time that we focus on keeping our families safe.
I think the Second Amendment is kind of another area where Democrats and Republicans typically are divided. I mean, you're a sheriff yourself, right? I know the Second Amendment is important to you, the ability for one to protect themselves. So when it comes to issues like the Second Amendment, how do you
I have to tell you, the Second Amendment, even Democrats believe in the Second Amendment. There's many who don't. They think that, gun violence is a concern. But really, our law-abiding citizens are not the ones committing crimes. Those are the ones who need to be able to exercise their Second Amendment. I have many Democrats in my district who have their concealed weapon permit. They believe in the Second Amendment. And that again goes back to, how do we keep our community safe? Regardless of Democrat or Republican, how do we keep people safe? Well, law-abiding citizens should be able to exercise their Second Amendment. But arguably, I as the sheriff agree that if there is someone who is a felon or has a mental health condition or doesn't have a history of obeying the rules, they should not be allowed to carry a gun. And so I think there's some middle ground there that we can work with Democrats and Republicans alike, where we can, again, make sure that we're focusing on the families, on people. How do we keep people safe? Well, I think if I were to sit with Democrats and argue that, or have a discussion with, in regards to law-abiding citizens, that that I think we can agree on some middle ground there. And again, I have Democrats in my county who exercise their Second Amendment right.
And Sheriff, you've told me kind of the focus for you now is boosting name ID here in Kern County.
Sure, yeah.
I think it's a fact pretty much that this is Vince Fong's home base, right?
It's his territory.
It is, exactly,
Yeah.
just like Tulare is your territory.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what's going to be the toughest part for you in targeting those Kern County voters?
Well, let me say this. I respect loyalty. And I respect that Vince, who's done work in the Assembly, has garnished that loyalty with his voters. I respect that, as I respect those who are loyal to me and the hard work that I've done. But I think when the messaging comes across, voters must ask themselves, what are we going to do moving into Congress, and who is the best candidate who has a track record of leadership? Well, I have 38 years of leadership. I run an agency of 1,000 people and a $120 million budget. I have a leadership and a track record that's quite frankly proven. But when you have false advertising in regards to my track record, I would argue that voters need to take a look. Who is the candidate that's standing on what he can do versus a candidate who is beating down or providing false information as to another candidate to what they aren't doing. And so when it comes to Kern County, I think that I need to be down here. I need to make sure that people see me. I need to shake hands, that they're comfortable with me, that I'm not this ghost of that they don't know. For me, coming down to Bakersfield, we have family here. And so when I hear that, hey, he's an outsider, he's not from here, I get taken back a little bit, because when I come to Bakersfield, I feel as if I'm home. What I have to do is make sure that there are people here that believe that, and they know I'm not a bad guy, right? And that I'm not here to take away from Kern. I'm here to add to Kern. And that is going to be probably one of my biggest challenges.
And you don't deny that persuading those people may be hard.
Very difficult. I think it'll be difficult out of loyalty for Fong. I respect that. I respect that loyalty. And I'm not here to take away from those who are loyal to Vince. What I am here to do is for those who want change, and there are many of them, those who want change in Congressional District 20, that I would be their candidate.
And on the topic of the assembly member and community support here, like we said, we see kind of the Kern Republican base, that local Republican base behind him. We saw Kevin McCarthy, we see him constantly behind the assembly member. And you also have former President Donald Trump endorsing him both March 5th and for the March 19th special election. So if you think about it, local, statewide, and national support for Vince Fong in many ways. So in this race, when you're going up against Vince Fong now face to face, what are you really up against? Is it the establishment? I mean, there's so much widespread support for him. So really, what are you going up against?
Well, I have equal support. You know, I have the Bakersfield Police Officers Association, Senator Shannon Grove, and Donnie Youngblood. I also have the support of the Kern County Law Enforcement Association. So I think what we have to ask ourselves is, who has the local support? Vince Fong has outside support from outside of the district. Now I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but we have to take a look at who is actually supporting here locally, who has a history and track record of working with me. We have many local support. When you move into Clovis, I have 4 of the 5 city council. I just received Mayor Jerry Dyer's endorsement, as well as Bretta Field, who's in an elected position in Fresno Clovis. And so there's a lot of elected people who are endorsing me, but I'm not taking away from Vince's support. Again, it's going to have to come down to the voter asking themselves, what 2 different backgrounds here are we most willing to support?
How has a Trump endorsement, the double endorsement, impacted your campaign?
Well, you know, the endorsement of President Trump, I'm a President Trump supporter, and so, you know, I honor that. How he got it, I think, is in question, but that's in our past, and we're moving forward here. And so what I want to move forward with is, you know, there's people here in Kern County, as well as throughout Congressional District 20, that they're frustrated, and they don't like what they've seen from the past, and they're ready for a fresh new outlook. That's what I represent. I represent a fresh new look, not taking away from anything Fong has done. But what I have done with my track record, I'm here ready to offer a fresh new set of eyes.
And Tuesday night, Sheriff, you told me that Kern is really that big challenge, as we've been discussing, right?
Yeah.
Fresno, Kings, Tulare, you have name ID there, you have support there.
Yeah.
Kings and Tulare, the vote results so far in both the March 5th and March 19th elections very clearly show that you are leading there. But Fresno, Fong is actually leading in that county.
Slightly. You know, and his assembly district runs up through there, so he has done work there. Again, I'm not taking away from anything Fong has done. What I'm here to say is you have two great candidates, two Republican candidates, both of which have different backgrounds, different styles of leadership. And so what I want to do is make sure that people in all parts of the district understand that for me, I represent law and order. I represent public safety. But I've also worked with legislators. I know the politics of it all. And I bring a fresh new look.
And lastly, on the assembly member, I want to touch on his ongoing lawsuit. He's kind of in this legal limbo in a way. He denies that it's in limbo because he is allowed to run for Congress. Voters have voted for him.
Yeah.
For you, it's in limbo. We don't know how exactly the state's gonna kind of proceed with this, but there is a chance that should he be barred from running for Congress, right? You as one of the top two candidates could get the position. What do you make of the lawsuit, just that legal limbo right now, and what kind of, what opportunities, if that's the right word, it could present for you?
Well, one of the reasons that we really need to be in this race is because there is the potential that Vince would not be successful in the litigation. But I'm running my race as if he is successful in that litigation. Courts are very difficult to give a guessing game as to what's the outcome's going to be. And so for us, you know, I wish the best for Vince in that litigation. But there is, you know, some potential issue there that he would not be able to run. I would hope that I become that leading candidate, that Vince would garnish his support towards me so that we can maintain a strong Republican candidate within this race. So it's not for me to decide how that goes. You know, I wish the best for him in that potential litigation, and you know, I'm a law and order guy, so I know the legal ins and outs of it as I read it. If you take a look at the black and white of it, he should not be able to be in the race. But courts found a difference of opinion, so here we are.
I have to ask, did you ever, coming into this race, kind of expect the Republican vote to be split so much among the four counties? I know you and the assembly member have always been on good terms, but it's really you two as the top tier GOP candidates that are splitting the vote. Did you anticipate there to be such a split coming into this race?
You know, I did. I did, because we have Republican voters who are frustrated. They're tired of what they've always had. There are some that are frustrated with McCarthy. Now, quite frankly, I get along with Kevin McCarthy, and I think he's done a good job. But there are many voters who are ready for something new. And so there's many of those voters out there. If you take a look at, there was far more many voters who didn't vote for Vince. And so there are people who are ready for something new. And, you know, are the numbers going to weigh out in my benefit? I don't know that to be true. But all I'm doing and offering, and I want the position, but what I'm doing is offering people a change. And there are people here, even in Kern, who are ready for change. And I hope that, you know, the vote goes my way in that regard. Now, you know, Vince, he's got loyal supporters here. I respect that. Kevin McCarthy is his friend. I wouldn't have expected it any other way. I don't think anyone else would have. And that has to be respected as well.
And I want to quickly touch on Democrat Marisa Wood. She ran a pretty strong race, as you noted, on Tuesday night as well. We talked about this earlier, but kind of the slim margin, and the votes are still being tallied up, I understand, but the rather slim margin that you've kind of been leading her by. What does that say about your campaign and really kind of how hard you need to work moving forward?
Well, I think that there's been no question from the beginning that we'll have to work hard. We were fully aware that as I got into this campaign, Vince was not allowed to be in the campaign. He was told by the Secretary of State, you can't run. Hence the reason I'm here. Right? I didn't get into this race to push against Vince or McCarthy or anyone else. I got into this race because I wanted to have a strong leader in this district because Vince was not allowed to run. Frankly. And so now here we are. And so what I've learned over the course of this campaign is that there are people who want change. Are the numbers strong enough for me? I don't know. But I knew as well that Marissa has name recognition. She's garnished good support. She's done good hard work on the Democrat side, so the Democrats were rallying behind her. And I knew that that would be close. I never thought that we would be in the number one position because we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of water to carry uphill, quite frankly, because, you know, Kern County carries 50% of the vote and Fong has a well-established name here.
What slowed, again, reflecting back on your campaign, what slowed you down? What was the most challenging part of the campaign?
I haven't been slowed down on any of it. Yeah, I don't know that we've had too many, you know, campaigns are challenging to say the least. I mean, if you were to argue what is the challenge, the biggest challenge for us is people meeting me down here, wanting to shake a hand and learn a little bit about me when, you know, obviously there's an established group of people here that have, you know, put their support behind Vince. And so that becomes a bit of a challenge, I think, if anything, in our campaign. What
about the number of candidates that you had to run against?
Yeah.
Obviously, it's a jungle primary in California overall, but you ran against 10 candidates on March 5th, 8 others on March 19th. So that kind of takes me to the role of the spoiler, as we call them, right? Had certain candidates perhaps not been in the race, had their votes gone to you, right? Would that have given you a bigger boost? I want to ask about those spoilers.
Yeah, I think that that's true, and that's when you take a look at Kyle Kirkland, great guy. I really like him a lot, of which he just gave me his endorsement. So he actually is a great financial mind who brought a different perspective into the race where the economy was his focus of attention. And, you know, hopefully with some of his endorsement that becomes part of the votes that we carry coming into the 21st. We don't know that to be true, but we're hoping that to be true.
So you have Kyle Kirkland, TJ Esposito, and David Giglio's endorsements.
Yes.
Okay.
David and I have actually, you know, become friends. When he first came out, he was hitting me pretty hard on social media, saying I was a bad guy, and then as we became friends in all these debates, as well as Kyle Kirkland, I've had coffee with him many times, and David, we've sat and had coffee, and David said, "Hey, Mike, you're not at all what I thought you were, and I'll never say anything bad about you again." And so David and I have become friends.
Yeah, when his endorsement first came out, I called him and I said, "Hey, I mean, just a month ago, you were saying the sheriff is a pro-amnesty person. You do not support him. What happened?"
Right.
And he told me exactly what you told me. He said, you guys have talked behind closed doors and kind of clarified misunderstandings.
Yeah, he's actually a really great guy. He's young and he's energetic and he wants to do great things for America, and he has different plans he's going to be putting in place. But he and I have become friends, and I like him a lot.
And last few questions for me, Sheriff. I was talking to a Hispanic voter in the 20th Congressional District, and she noted she didn't see anything really from the campaigns that, you know, targeted the Latino vote here, or any ads, any campaigning in Spanish. I want to ask you, did you guys target the Latino vote at all? If not, why not?
Well, we're targeting every vote, every background that we can, so that we can make sure that we impact those communities. You know, we've been meeting with the African American community here in Bakersfield quite regularly. We have a large Latino Hispanic population up and down the Central Valley. We've been meeting with them not only in Clovis and in our county, but we have meetings set up in the future as well. We want to make sure that we're reaching everybody to make sure that we have a good, strong, solid, unified Congressional District 20. And that's going to mean that we have to reach out to everyone. Doesn't matter what your racial background is. But there are concerns within the Latino community and the Hispanic community when it comes to DACA, when it comes to the migrant workforce up and down the Central Valley. And I have a long track record of working very closely with them. And then I think that arguably Vince calls me an amnesty candidate a lot of times because I work very closely with our migrant communities here in the Central Valley. And there's differences of opinion. It doesn't mean amnesty. I don't mean that you cut in line. I mean, what I mean by that is that, look, first and foremost, we need to get rid of the most egregious, felonious people who have come into this country hiding in the shadows. They need to be identified. And then we need to find people within the last few years who have just cut in line and found their way into this country. But what I'm referring to is the DACA children who have been here since they were 18 months old. Is that who you deport first? I argue not. The dairyman who's worked on a dairy for the last 10, 15, 20 years and his family was born and raised here, is that who you deport first? Arguably not. I think that there needs to be categories within that system. There needs to be a planning phase within that. There needs to be a smooth transition into green card and work visas for those who are working here. And quite frankly, our agricultural industry and economy relies on a good phased plan. Now, does that mean amnesty? No, it doesn't mean amnesty. We have a legal and lawful way of coming into this country. I think that the Biden administration has destroyed any aspects of growth and positive issues concerning work visas and green cards, but those need to be fixed. And so because of that, I get called an Obama policy amnesty candidate, and that couldn't be further from the truth.
And I want to actually touch on the Texas kind of immigration law that's
Sure.
being discussed right now because it's so fresh, but really quickly on the Latino voters in the 20th Congressional District. I just want to confirm with your campaign, there are no ads in Spanish at the moment, correct?
Right now there's
Okay.
not, but there's some being designed.
Okay, and you are, like you said, in constant communication with
Yes.
various communities and those local leaders.
And I'm meeting today with people
Okay.
at a town hall meeting.
Right.
So we want people to know who I am. And again, I'm not trying to separate people from Fong. I'm trying to identify people who want change.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I go in and meet people, I'll have people who shake my hand and say, hey, we just didn't know you before, and we're happy to meet you. And that's part of my plan.
And on that kind of continuing debate on the Texas immigration law, right,
Sure.
which would essentially allow local law enforcement to arrest individuals if they're suspected of having come into the country, right, kind of outside of what's allowed by the law. What do you make of that? I know you've long been frustrated.
Well, look, I'm frustrated. I think citizens are frustrated. I think that I know for a fact, there's Latino and Hispanic community here in the Central Valley. They're frustrated. There's many people who say, look, you don't get to circumvent the system. But Texas has a bigger problem than the Central Valley right now. They have thousands upon thousands of people just flooding over their border into their communities. The ability to house and feed and the economy impacts of that and how those communities are able to afford and support people just coming in, unable to identify those who are dangerous to the community, they have a major problem down there. And so they need to shut it off, shut it down, and we need to start reevaluating how our process is, because you just can't have people come in, circumvent the system, and flood the United States, specifically in Texas. How are these people living? We don't have the housing for this. California, we have dealt with illegal immigration through Mexico for years and years. But we're seeing a different flood of people come in now from El Salvador, Yemen, Syria. We have a different element that's coming in and making our country dangerous. So there's different components here. It's not one soundbite answer. We do need a strong and secure border. It needs to be shut down. But for the Central Valley, you need to understand that we have people that don't just fall into the category of put them in a bus and ship them out. For the examples I give you, I had a young lady come into my office who said that her work visa had ran out. Well, she came to the United States and became a dentist. She was a practicing dentist in Fresno, and they're having her leave because her work visa ran out. So those aren't the people who are dangerous to us. Those are the people who are working, thriving here. And so there needs to be a category of listing of how you deal with those people.
And I have to, so, I mean, a law to the extent of that Texas immigration law right now, is that something you would support or be in favor of?
We're different here than in Texas.
Yeah.
Texas has got a problem,
Yeah.
and so they're having to deal with it at that level.
Right.
If that type of activity was taking place right here in the Central Valley, I would argue we need to up our game for sure. But what I deal with as sheriff is, you can't get rid of the fact that Senate Bill 54, California is a sanctuary state. Our legislators, including Vince Fong, never pushed back on sanctuary state. So now you're criticizing me as the sheriff for following the law of the state. So for me, I have pushed back against Senate Bill 54. I've pushed back against sanctuary state. But now arguably you're saying, hey, you know, you're as a congressional candidate, you support amnesty. No, I don't support amnesty. I support and have to defend the law that you never pushed back on, which is sanctuary state in California. So don't criticize me for enforcing the law.
Sheriff, that's it for me, but is there anything else about the March 5th election or the March 19th special election that you would like to touch on?
I'm just very thankful for the voters who chose to put their checkbox next to my name. We're going to continue to shake hands and work hard, and hopefully we meet those people who are ready for change. Again, I'm not Vince Fong's enemy. I think that the democracy would demand, and it's very exciting to see two Republicans in this race with two unique, different perspectives and backgrounds. And we'll see how the voters play it out come on the 21st.
Sheriff Boudreaux, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you.